Welcome to Shovel Talk, a podcast for economic developers. From your friends at the Golden Shovel Agency.
Welcome back, Shovelheads, to another episode of Shovel Talk. Darren Barley here, welcome you to an interview with Chris Suozzi, aka Coach Swazz, who's the Executive Vice President of Business and Workforce Development in Genesee County in New York State. Him and Bethany are going to talk about building tomorrow's workforce. And if you look up Chris on social media, you might see he may be a bit of a football fan. And I do know that him and Bethany talk about his successful Glow with Your Hands event to help out youth apprenticeship programs in his area, but I don't know if they talk about jumping on burning tables pregame. We'll soon find out. Take it away, Bethany.
Hello, everyone. I am Bethany Quinn, Executive Vice President with Golden Shovel Agency, and I am joined today by Chris Suozzi. I'm very excited about this conversation. Chris actually also goes by Coach. You'll learn more about that later. But he is Executive Vice President of Business and Workforce Development for Genesee County Economic Development Center in New York. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Bethany, for having us.
I was hoping you could give our listeners a little bit of background into who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, it's a loaded question probably, right? But I am, again, my name's Chris Suozzi, and I've been doing economic development going on my 17th year. Before that, I spent 20 years in the private sector and supply chain as an executive for supply chain. So I was kind of on the other side of the fence a little bit. And then I joined the dark side, as we like to say here in economic development. But having a lot of fun doing it, and I have a lot of energy for it. So I'm excited to talk more about what we do here.
That's awesome. And, you didn't say this specifically. I know you mentioned being from the private sector, but in the past, I know you also did some work as a site selector. And now that you're on the economic development side, I was hoping you could kind of situate the readers or the listeners here as far as what's changed for site selectors. Well, how has their priorities shifted?
Yeah, back, like I said, back in the day when I was on the other side doing site selection, and you're trying to obviously, put your location in the optimal site, right? Optimal is the key word, and optimal is loaded nowadays, because it's not just about, the location from a transportation perspective. It's about, you got to have your whole ecosystem around you. So your support systems, your supply chain, as well as your workforce. And really that's the key ingredient nowadays, is that workforce piece, because it's such a critical point, and no one's successful if you don't have workforce, right? And in my role, like I said, 17 years ago, I started as the VP of Economic Development. And then about 7 years ago, I got a new title added to my name. It was Economic and Workforce Development. And that took on a whole new mission there that we'll talk more about today.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you from what we're seeing. It's that ecosystem is so critical now. And COVID did not create this problem. It certainly exacerbated it, because I think it showed us where a lot of our workforce gaps were. And it's a challenge that people are facing, obviously, all over the country. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to have this conversation today, is because you've been working on some really innovative projects that do help with that workforce recruitment, and then making sure people have the right skills for those in-demand jobs. Which leads me to my question. Yeah. How are you generating interest in young people to go into these fields? I just so you know, Chris, my husband and I have 7 kids, and I know that you have to start that interest young, right? You can't wait until they're in college to start talking to them. So what are you doing to capture that attention?
Yes. You ready for this? Okay. Because there's a lot to do, right? So in terms of when I was putting my economic development hat on, we had a big mega site that we were promoting. It's called STAMP. Stands for Science and Technology Advanced Manufacturing Park. It's a 1,250 acre mega site. So I knew that about 7 years ago, that if we started filling this site, we're going to really, take all the workforce that's around the area. So how am I going to really help retain, our legacy companies here locally? So my sense of urgency is like nobody else, because I seen this coming 7 years ago. So that's when I put my workforce development hat on. And in doing so, I started this thing called Coach Swazz, because when I was
Oh,
looking
and for everyone who can't see, he literally just put a hat on.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. All
The
right.
coach's hat's on. So, and I'm a part of the Bills Mafia, for everyone out there. And that's just a whole different lifestyle in itself. But workforce development, instead of, the system was a push system where I seen money being thrown, from the state down to our 4-year schools and 2-year schools. And I said, that's great, but if kids in K through 12 don't see that, how are they going to gravitate towards those opportunities? And then we have industry saying, we need skills and we need on-demand or in-demand jobs, and where are we going to find these workers? Well, I looked at it and it says, we have them in our backyard, right? We have them in K through 12. So I started developing a pull system, and I did the Coach Swazz thing because I wanted to be seen like, somebody that they're more familiar with, a youth coach, a career coach, and sports. And I do a lot of sports related to careers correlation, and, versus being seen like an old economic developer. So when I go into high schools, I start, talking to kids as Coach Swazz, and it puts them in a different level. And they're like, oh, this guy's cool. He's a coach, and he talks about sports and how careers and sports are correlated. And one example that I always used back in the day was when I did do some youth coaching, we were always getting basketball in our school system. And I went to a Catholic school back in the day, and they said, why are you guys so good? And I said, well, because we started in 3rd and 4th grade. And so the correlation to careers is similar, that the younger we can start kids, the better we can focus them. And all my pitches when I go out is really aimed at trying to align kids to local careers that are in their backyard. And so that's what Coach Swazz does. And in terms of listening to our employers saying that we need these skill sets, one of the things that I did is I took economic development money to the tune of $700,000, and I invested it in mechatronics. And mechatronics is mechanical, electrical, information technology, all rolled together. And that's all the technician level training that every company needs, whether you're advanced manufacturing, food processing, in the utilities, electrical line technicians, and so on. That core competency is, this mechatronics. And so I invested that in our high school program because I wanted kids to see this. And what we do here, we've put this in place for 4 years, and we just graduated our 100th technician out of high school. And we're creating our own, ecosystem, right? Our workforce system. We're growing them organically from within. And 50% of those kids went on to work directly at our local companies. A lot of them, we do what's called a youth apprenticeship program, where 11th graders are doing a job shadow, 12th graders are doing a paid internship. And a lot of them are staying right with the company and walking to their apprenticeship program. And the other 50% go on for additional training. So, and then they'll come back and stay in the system. So that, started a whole kind of revolution of Coach Swazz and things that I do kind of creatively to really keep on building that ecosystem. And now that we got the mechatronics going in 11th to 12th grade, you still got to market, downwardly. So we got to get the 7th and 8th graders aligned. And 7 years ago, I co-founded this event called Glow with Your Hands. And Glow is our 4-county region that's right between Rochester and Buffalo, New York, where I'm located. The Glow area is Genesee, Livingston, Orleans, and Wyoming County. It's a 4-county region. And so what I started, co-founded, it was an event called Glow with Your Hands. And we have actually kids from 8th grade through 12th grade go to this event, and we have over 1,000 kids there, over 70 companies there, and they work with their hands for the day. They get on backhoes, they have a hammering competition. We bring mechatronics there. We have welding simulators. So it's an interactive day that's like no other, and it gets kids out of the classroom thinking about careers, and it allows local companies to see their future workforce talent. And as well as it really enables the younger kids to see careers that they don't read about in textbooks. So that's taken on a whole life of its own. And we're really excited that over 40% of our career and tech education high school programs have seen 40% growth over the last couple, 2-3 years by building these programs. So there's a lot in a short amount of time, but I just try to give you a small taste of, things that you have to do in K through 12.
Yeah. So you hopped on this podcast, which means that I get to drill down deeper. You signed yourself up for this.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, so I absolutely love this. This is so unique. I haven't seen this anywhere else. Just the fact, like you said, that you're going into the schools and making people comfortable with that coach persona is fantastic. We have a lot of economic developers doing great work and going into the schools, but you're right, there can be a little bit of that barrier if they don't know you, and maybe you come across more like their principal than their friend or their coach, someone they trust. So I think that's fantastic. You've been able to break down the barriers in that way. A couple of questions that I have for you.
Mm-hmm.
So these kids are going to the GLOW event. That sounds so cool. How did you get buy-in from so many companies and so many schools? I mean, you're talking about 4 counties. That's a lot of superintendents and principals and everybody you got to get on board, transportation. That's a big lift. How'd you do it?
It's a big lift. Well, just like economic development is a team sport, workforce development is a team sport as well. So when I put my economic development hat on, I know the companies, right? Because I'm working with them. And I know that they need workforce. So my model is, you got to put your money where your mouth is, right? And you got to help solve the problem, be part of the solution, not just be on the outside looking in. So I really engage with our current employers and get them to actually help sponsor the event, because the event takes time and money. And not only do they sponsor it, but they also attend the event on the other side. And then with the workforce side, I teamed up with our workforce investment board, and we both had a mission about, we're not just going to talk about it. We're going to do something. And I hate when people are saying let's do STEM and let's do this, and they're throwing things out there and they're doing things, but they're not tying it together.
Sure.
And you got to all roll in the same direction. So one of the things that I kind of pride myself on is I'm like the champion that takes the traditional ecosystem. You got K through 12, you got training centers, you got, your 2-year schools, and you have workforce programs, Department of Labor's, and everybody's been running in silos, right? So I'm the champion that brings everybody together to say, look, here's our common goal. And one of the first things I did was I came up with this slogan called Genesee Fast. And that's kind of our workforce model. And FAST stands for, F is for food processing, A is for advanced manufacturing, S is for skilled trades, and T is for technicians. That's kind of our core mission of saying this is what we need. We can't be everything to everybody, but if we concentrate on this is kind of how we bring it all together. And then, to be honest, the Glow with Your Hands event, by putting everybody together, and we have, people in workforce development are so passionate. Right? Everybody loves what they do. They love trying to help a kid, see a career path, especially if we can tie it to, locally and keep them here. And that's ultimately what we want as,
Sure.
as workforce developers, as parents, and the ecosystem, right? So by having that event, we brought this whole 4-county region together, and everybody kind of put down, their individual silos and said, let's do this together. And once we did that and we seen the passion all synergized together, it just took a life of its own. And it's been an incredible run, and everybody is so well working together. And I'm kind of the guy that just brings everybody in, and everybody's been doing wonderful things. I'm just the guy that's in the middle and making sure everybody's rolling in the same direction. And I have that passion as well.
Sure. Well, I think it's also nice to have that central event that you can bring everyone together around. But still, again, fantastic. I know that must have been a very heavy lift. All right. Next follow-up question. You're talking about getting all these kids to the event, and now I'm going to put my mom hat on. So kids go to this event and they may have an amazing time. They're getting exposed. They're not remembering what to do to further their career after the event. The interest is peaked.
Right.
Most kids lack the level of responsibility and initiative to come home and say, I'm going to fill out a form, or I'm going to go talk to my counselor. But you've seen a 40% increase in enrollment in those programs. So you guys have obviously figured out a way to close that gap. What are you doing?
Yeah, so I mean, we certainly we have follow-ups as well. So in our committees, in our Glow with Your Hands, we plan this all year long now, right? So this is not just something that just happens, even though it's one day a year. We actually we even started a healthcare event as well that we do at a different time of the year. But we have committees. We have a workforce committee, a school engagement committee. Logistics, we have sponsorships and different committee members, but the school engagement committee is really, focused on that. So we not only have people at the event, but we really want to make sure that the schools, because we only give them a certain number because of 30 school districts that we actually bring to this event, we have to cap it because we have like about 40 kids from each school to have 1,200 kids at the event. So we really want to make sure the schools pick, the right kids, number one. And then there's a pre-meeting that happens at the school, and then there's a post-meeting. So we follow back up with them. And at the event, we have these cinch backpacks that we give the kids, and we have a lot of information in there in terms of what to do next, depending on their level. And at the event, we really encourage guidance counselors and teachers to attend as well, so that they get firsthand knowledge and see this incredible event, and they understand what the workers are, because a lot of times the schools and the teachers don't know our own companies in their backyard. So we have a lot of information. We have a roadmap of where all the businesses are located, so that schools counselors and teachers can understand that. We really want to tie in to curriculum about, like, if you're teaching something like, say, chemistry, and we have this hydrogen company that's a new company that we brought in, relate that in your lesson plan so that kids understand that there's a new company that's doing hydrogen generation, and tie that into their lesson. Right. So we do a lot of that really kind of soft stuff that really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what you're saying about having the pre-meeting and the post-meeting with the kids, that probably helps a lot, because then if they really were excited, there's somebody to guide them as far as getting the next steps. Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah. And it's like everything, you keep on getting better every year, right? Because again, my whole purpose is about effectiveness. We're not talking about it. We want to be effective, that we're making this change for the better of everybody. First, the student, we want them to have, understand what their passion is, right? Because if you can take their passion and put a career overlap that's utopia, right? And that's the goal. Right. That's what we try to shoot for. But kids don't know, their parents don't know, because a lot of times their parents, want to guide them towards a college career path, where we know nowadays, that college return on investment isn't necessarily there. And we know employers want to take kids and groom them and bring them into apprenticeship type programs. And we're seeing that benefit is, incredible, right? So everybody's getting, better equipped with more knowledge than they ever have, with all the great information that we have at our disposal. And of course, we do a lot of social media and tie in, all this good stuff that we're talking about, so that we really try to cast a big net, that we capture everybody we can, parents, teachers, and students in our system.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. Now, I know you said you've been doing this event for 4 years. Is that correct?
The Glow with Your Hands event actually has been 6 years.
Okay.
The mechatronics program has been 4 years and counting.
It'll be really interesting over time, because you are going to have obviously some kids that go into the apprenticeship program, some that go to a 2-year, some that go to a 4-year, or even graduate school. And obviously with all these fields, you need people of every skill level.
Totally.
I don't know if you have a mechanism in place for this, but it would be quite fascinating to look back 10 years from now and see where these kids end up.
Yeah. I mean, we try to track as much as we can. It's very difficult because, of course, it takes two to communicate. Right. And a lot of times the kids, they're great in the front end, and then, challenging them to return emails and texts, they're on a different pathway sometimes. So
Sure.
it's hard to do, but we have mechanisms in place to the best of our ability, and we'll continue to do that. And yeah, you're perfectly right. It'd be great to see this in 10 years. But I like to say the metrics that I see are two things: is the school enrollment and the programs that we're targeting is up 40%, and then our unemployment rate is the other metric, and understanding, are we filling all the jobs that we have available in our community? And those
Sure.
are the two big things, right? And we're seeing, especially for our technician level and our skill level programs, we're seeing incredible stories, and we're getting our companies that are joined in with us. They're saying their under 25-year-old workforce is the best it's ever been.
Oh,
And
that's
it's
great.
coming directly from plant managers and HR managers.
Great. So not only are you getting kids into these in-demand jobs, but they're doing an excellent job when they're there.
Exactly.
That's great.
It's
One
pretty
of the complaints that, again, we work nationwide, that we hear quite a bit from people in workforce and in companies is the lack of soft skills. Have you been able to incorporate that at all into your program?
Yeah, we do as much as we can. Certainly, we have, to be honest, some of our teachers are great, like especially in our what I call our advanced manufacturing curriculum, which is mechatronics and metal trades. The metal trades is computer and numerical control and welding. And so between the three units, we have great teachers, and we emphasize soft skills with them, and they do a great job, teaching kids. And, it's kind of like in a boot camp format where these guys, especially when we do the apprenticeship program. So when we do the youth apprenticeship, it's getting kids that job shadow, that internship at the company level. But, before you get there, you got to coach them and say, look, this is what you got to do at the company. When you're in there to job shadow, you got to be, well-groomed. You got to, listen. You got to be a team player. You got to show up on time. So all that stuff is tracked, and the feedback is given back to the students. And there's certainly kids that we need to, step it up, right, and give them a little, guidance and coaching, and say, look, you're late. You come late again, you're not going to be able to attend this. And kids, they have two ways of going, right? Either they're going to straighten up or they're going to ship out, and that's up to them. And but that emphasis is incredibly done well, with our teachers, and because of the youth apprenticeship program.
And it's nice for them to learn those skills and lessons before
Early,
they become financially responsible for themselves, right? That's why it's so great to get them in 11th grade, like you were talking about. So
we also do a pre-apprenticeship boot camp, which is a 6 weeks earn as you learn program in the summertime.
Okay.
And we get kids 18 to 24-year-olds in that position, and we let them go to school for free from Monday through Thursday, half a day, and then the afternoons we pair them with a company in the afternoons and all day Friday. So they get 24 hours paid, 16 hours of education for 6 weeks, and that really, that is a boot camp, and in the format that if you show up later, you get kicked in the where, and if you're not on time and you're not doing the right thing. So again, it's we put the emphasis back to the student and saying, this is what we demand of you, because this is what our customers demand, our companies demand. So you're better hearing it from us than to start, with a company and then slack off, and then you wonder why, you're not working there no more. And so those teachings and coaching happen every day.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, you got your coach hat on, so you know all about it.
Yes.
So let's shift a little bit. Instead of talking about the students themselves and what you're doing, how about you coach other economic developers that are listening? What advice could you give them to get started? Because obviously what you've done takes time, right?
It does.
And you got to start small. So what should they do?
So again, one of the things that I would like to say, like economic developers in theory just do economic development. They don't incorporate workforce development. So if you want to make a difference, you got to do what I like to do, or like to say I do, is you got to get in the middle of workforce development. You got to pull your partners together, your agencies, and let them understand, what you're doing on the economic development side. So that ties into what the workforce development programs that you can match that in your own backyard, so the model works no matter where you are. If you're in rural America or metro America, it's all about knowing who, your customers are and what their needs are, and then working with your workforce partners. And, a lot of things I do, I'm the biggest cheerleader for our workforce partners because they do incredible, things, and they have great initiatives. And like I said, it's just pulling them together so that they're tied into the economic development side of the game is the real important part. And I'm certainly available at any time. If anybody wants some coaching on the side, I'm available to do that, because my mission is that we have some great programs across the state, but a lot of things that I'm doing is replicatable. So the models can happen in any place in any part of the country.
Yeah, and that's a really important note. Obviously people might hear the numbers of attendees to Glow with Your Hands, over 1,000 kids. That might seem quite shocking if you're in a rural community where you just don't have that population size. But I think the point is that even if you do an event with 50 kids,
right,
if you're in a small community, you can see some positive results.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, I also wanted to get your insight into, the local versus the regional approach, because you are doing things in your own backyard, but also in a 4-county region. So how do you balance that?
It's, it's how much bandwidth you have, right, in general. But I try to, balance it in such a way that, if somebody needs help, in the region, yeah, I'm there for them, right? I mean, I just make myself available, and like anything, through scheduling and through like Zoom calls and things of that nature, you can be more efficient at doing things. So I'm always out, ready to help out in any way that I can, because to me, there's no borders. Even though I'm specific in in our county, with there's only a population of about 60,000. But when you put our rest of our Glow region together, we're almost, like a little metro. But certainly, it's balancing things out, and it's getting people to help themselves out, right? And we teach them and coach them, on some of these models, and they run with it, right? And then they're off and running and doing things themselves. So that's the biggest thing to me is, we're here to help, but workforce isn't competitive in my nature, in terms of the counties and support in the region, because kids are going to overlap and they're going to go to companies throughout the region. So we're all in it together is my model. Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those artificial boundaries don't necessarily apply when you're wanting to live somewhere and have a job that's available and open to you.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's great. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to share with our listeners in regards to your workforce development programs or your approach to economic development?
Well, the last thing I'll just say is, again, and when you talk to kids, they're different, right? You gotta put yourself to the audience that you're talking to. And one of the cool slogans that I just started, and again, after years of doing this and trying to reach kids, right? Like I said earlier, it's all about effectiveness to me. Can I reach them and get them going? And so I came up with a slogan called "Make $1 million in Mechatronics and Metal Trades." And so that captures the attention of kids. And this can happen anywhere, because the Make $1 million, what I do is I get them, I get their attention right out of the gate. Who wants to make $1 million? And everybody raises their hand. And I says, sure, you can make your high school degree. And so they pay attention right out of the gate. And then I talk to them about these programs that we're doing in mechatronics and metal trades and the youth apprenticeship program and so on. And then I finish with, and I show them how to do that, because we're getting kids right now coming out of high school that are in this field that are making like $60,000 a year, coming out of high school. And then they walk into a company's apprenticeship program. And then every year in the company's apprenticeship program, they get a bump and raise for everything they learn on the job training. Then after 4 years, they're making $79,000 a year. Then if you tack on another 8 years after that, and with the 3% cost of living adjustment, so after year 12, they'll be making $100,000 a year. But if you add years 1 to years 12 up in total, it's $1 million.
Oh, wow.
And so we show them you can make $1 million And that's how you do it with your high school degree. And this could be with no debt, student debt, or,
Sure.
very minimal. And that's kind of the program that I started, and it captures your attention, and it can be done for skilled trades, of course, or anything in the advanced manufacturing trade sector. But to me, that model catches their attention when you're out there talking to the kids in K through 12, and it's pretty cool. It's been working really good. And then from that, I got, a lot of things centered around make $1 million in mechatronics and metal trades. So we have like pens, and we have these little squeeze things. I don't know if you can see this, but that have that slogan on it. And it's, again, to capture kids. And a lot of times when I'm doing that, of course, the teachers want to know how to make $1 million. And so
Sure.
they're, actively involved as well. But it's a different world out there nowadays, and the skilled trades and technicians are really doing really well in terms of 100% job placement and making the most money from any degree that you can get. So STEM and skilled trades is where it's at.
Sure. Yeah, and I think you're right. Obviously, capturing their attention with money, the outcome for them is obviously a good idea. So we have reached a point in our podcast, Chris, where we play a game. And I didn't prep you for this on purpose, because we got to see how fast you can think on your toes.
Ooh.
So I'm going to ask you 10 completely random questions that are going to help our listeners get to know you better. And I'm going to time you and see how fast you can answer them.
Oh, wow.
This is our
Let's go.
shovel toss game.
I love it.
All right. I know you're competitive, so you ready to go?
I am competitive. Go.
All right. Ending it now. First car.
Chevelle.
Favorite dessert.
Ice cream.
If you could be a superhero, who would you be?
Superman.
Favorite vacation destination.
Bahamas.
Book you're reading right now.
Book. I'm sorry. I thought you said something else. I actually am not reading a book right now.
Okay, top of your bucket list.
Italy.
Go-to song.
Go-to song is good question. Man, that stumped me a little bit. Shout.
Something you can't live without.
My phone.
What you wish you could have known when you started your career.
Workforce. I wish I would have known about workforce more.
What you want to be remembered for.
Coach Swazz.
55 seconds. I think that you probably have a new record. Normally, our average is 120 to 130. So
Okay.
pretty good, Coach Swazz.
You stumped me on the music one. I had to think about that one.
Right. Had to think about the song, but still, you got 55 seconds. So great job.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing your story. I hope that people can learn from your success, because honestly, you're doing something really cool, but you're clearly having fun with it too. And that's so great when you can combine the two.
Well, when I said earlier, when you've got your passion, you try to find a career. It took me 35 years to find that. So I'm trying to accelerate the model in all the things that I do. But I really, found this to really, my passion is to help kids and, find their careers. So it's pretty cool.
Hey, now you mentioned earlier one last thing that people could potentially reach out to you if they have questions. So do you want to throw your website address out there?
Sure. It's www.gcedc.com, which stands for Genesee County Economic Development Center. So gcedc.com. And I got a great workforce page. There's a lot of cool things on there. There's a career checklist that's on there too, that I help kids for free and to help them find their careers. So take a look at that checklist as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too, Bethany. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bethany. Well, as you know, it is the holiday season, and that means the Golden Shovel Year in Review is coming up. We are hopefully dropping that before the end of the year. However, that may happen just after the new year, but I know you're all waiting with bated breath. It is coming, so do not worry about that. So it's been a wonderful year here at Shovel Talk. We really picked up our game on this podcast, I believe. A lot more episodes, a lot more consistency in dropping our episodes, and we're really looking forward to a wonderful 2025. And again, stay tuned for the annual Golden Shovel Year in Review. Happy holidays. Darren Varley here from Shovel Talk. Have a good one. Thank you.